which is Rachel Cohen. And we've been in touch with Rachel for many years now, big admirers of her work in different countries around the world. She is the founder and director of the Common Threads Project, whose model is rooted in a neuroscientific and social-cultural understanding of trauma. So it's therefore a perfect presentation to share with you today. She's coming to us, I think, from New York. Is that where you are, Rachel?
Well, I'm traveling at the moment, so I'm actually in Chicago this
Okay.
weekend. But yes, I'm based in Brooklyn, New York, typically, when I'm not on the road.
Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and we look forward to hearing about how you're working with women in many different countries in different areas of conflict around the world. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. I'm really honored to be here with the World Hope Forum. And a few spontaneous remarks before I get started, because I was very taken with your presentation, Lee, on swaddling. And it reminds me of a technique that we teach the women in our healing circles, which is self-swaddling. For comfort, for soothing when they become very upset. We have many techniques that we use. This one was developed by a neuroscientist in the US named Peter Levine. And it's for containment of very strong emotion. When people are overwhelmed or flooded, it will take me 2 seconds to teach it to you. And I thought everyone might enjoy this as a self-soothing activity. And then I'll get into what I had planned for today. But this is, you can do anytime, and people will hardly know what it is you're doing, but you will feel. So you take your right hand. Let's see if I can stand back a little bit and place it across your heart. You'll feel your heartbeat, and just tuck it under your arm slightly so you can feel that containment. And take your left hand and put it across your right arm so you feel a slight hug, and you also can feel your heart beating. And you're going to breathe slowly for a moment. Just inhale and exhale slowly, slowly. And you allow yourself to settle in to this, just listening to your breath and feeling your heartbeat. Maybe your heartbeat will even slow down just a little bit. And you just assume this position as a way of containing your own emotions. And we find that it can be very effective. So I just wanted to add that in as a little gift for all of us from
Thank you. That
Peter Levine, because swaddling is such a primal method of comfort that and your slides, it always very inspiring for me. So I had to add that remark for everyone. Thank you so much, Lee, for bringing us to that. And now I have asked Ragna to play a little video for me to begin, if that's okay. And then I'll share my screen after that. Okay. Now we just need some sound. At Common Threads Project, we accompany women and girls on their healing journey from sexual violence, war, and displacement. We have developed a unique methodology for this process. In our programs in Ecuador, Nepal, Bosnia, and Eastern Congo, we have witnessed a miraculous capacity for resilience and growth. Even in the most challenging contexts, recovery is possible. Our work is inspired by the ancient tradition of making story cloths that is found in so many different cultures. We know that our deepest human experiences seem to defy words. So in many contexts throughout history, women have come together to sew their unspeakable stories as a way of being understood. We combine this practice with current trauma therapies to achieve profound and lasting recovery. We work in collaboration with local community organizations. Common Threads Project trains local practitioners who adapt the program so that it is culturally resonant. They lead the healing circles, and we mentor them as they gain expertise. In a Common Thread circle, there is a sense of intimate connection with others. Within the safety of the group, we work where trauma lives, in the body and in visual images. The stitching itself is calming, rhythmic, and meditative. Like trauma work, the story cloth happens at a slow pace. It takes time and patience. So I will tell you that as a clinical psychologist, I work with survivors of all kinds of human rights abuses and atrocities, people who the world has given up on in many cases. And what I want to say about hope today is that healing really is possible even, but it takes a great deal of creativity and patience, and the power of a group to support where the women and survivors support one another. It's not a quick fix or a simple one, but every survivor deserves an opportunity for deep and enduring recovery. So I'm going to share today the intervention that we've developed over the past decade and implemented successfully in a lot of different contexts. The material that I show you today, some of the work of the survivors, is disturbing at times, and the stories I tell you are perhaps disturbing. But I think it's very important for us to bear witness both to the experience of the atrocities and to the resilience and courage of these women as they heal and move on with their lives. We need to bear witness to the miraculous capacity for healing. And we're going to talk a little bit about the comprehensive kind of scientifically generated solutions that come from art-based intervention and textile work, and that it really enables recovery. So what we find in trauma treatment is that the typical kinds of verbally based treatments really do not get where trauma lives in the body and in images in particular. We need to move beyond words into the realm of the nonverbal, and we need to help the nervous system to regulate itself in a new way. We need to allow for creative expression. People need to revisit traumatic memories and be able to restore their own voice and their sense of agency. Okay, so we borrow from this very ancient and ubiquitous practice of story cloths. And this is a phenomenon that exists all over the world in so many different cultures. You may know of the arrieras that were created during the dictatorship of Pinochet in Chile to express to the world what was happening and the kinds of human rights abuses that were occurring. Women were gathered in church basements in secret in Chile to sew the images of the disappeared. And they smuggled these out of Chile, and that's how much of the world initially found out about what was really going on there. Just going to go through a little history of some of these. There were Hmong story cloths that talked about, we can go on to the next one, talked about atrocities there. And then we have a collection of about more than 3,000 story cloths made about the experience of women during apartheid in South Africa. So this exists all over the world. Another, of course, you will know of the AIDS quilt in the US and internationally, where people told the stories of their lost loved ones in textile form. It was a way for them to pay tribute and to heal. So what is it about this phenomenon that is so powerful and so therapeutic that we have borrowed it in trauma treatment that we do around the world? Well, of course, there is the connection that happens in an intimate sewing circle that is very healing. There is the emotional safety that when the hands are busy, of course, and there's no eye contact required, this allows for a kind of free expression and disclosure. People begin to talk to one another about things they might not otherwise speak about. And self-expression when things are hard to, no, let's go back to the same slide, sorry. When things are hard to express, using images, of course, can be a very useful way to tell the story, especially for women who have been silenced and where trauma has led to constriction. And of course, as you know, the sewing is self-regulating, calming, rhythmic. And when you pair that with a very demanding work, therapy of trauma processing, the women can tolerate that therapy much better when they're sewing. And there's the gradual pace. Like trauma treatment, the stitching goes slowly. It takes a while. And then there is this sense of mastery, making something maybe even beautiful out of a horrific experience helps to transform the pain. So the idea is to emerge from social isolation into connection, to transform stigma and shame into dignity and pride, to move from constriction to creativity, to restore a sense of possibility for the future. Let's go to the next slide. Thank you. So working in a group is key. And a psychologist that I much admire, named Judith Herman, says, and way back, the solidarity of a group provides the strongest protection against terror and despair, and the strongest antidote to traumatic experience. Next. So science comes to this long after culture, the wisdom of this practice. We now understand the neurobiology of it much better. And we understand that trauma is stored not in words, but in another part of the brain altogether, that the left prefrontal cortex, where analytical thought and verbal language is processed, actually shuts down during trauma. And what you have is an activation or lighting up of the visual cortex, where images are, and the sensory motor system. So this practice actually engages the parts of the brain, the parts of the nervous system that are affected by trauma. There's a whole other talk about the neurobiology of this, but that's as much as I'm going to say about it today. So we'll go ahead. So that I can finally show you some story cloths pretty soon. So this gives you a sense of Common Threads project now exists in a number of different countries where we've trained local partners to carry on the work and make it their own. In 2024, we're going to be launching a program in Nigeria. In March, we begin to work with the Boko Haram survivors who were kidnapped, and some have been rescued. This is more than 12 years ago, but many have been rejected in their communities and families, nowhere to go. We'll be partnering with an extraordinary organization in Abuja, Nigeria, called the Neem Foundation. And so we'll be working with them to develop healing circles there. And as well, we'll be launching programs this year in Washington, D.C., and continuing other projects. In the U.S., we work with refugee communities primarily who've survived torture. Okay, and we'll go on. So I'm going to show you some story cloths. I'm not going to tell you all of the stories because I think it will overwhelm. But here is one from one of our early circles in Ecuador. We give prompts when it's time to begin the story cloths. We don't just ask, tell me your trauma story, ever. But we offer opportunities for expression. So we give prompts like, this is a moment I will never forget. And then come some stories, there's sketching and so forth. And then they make this textile. This you can see there are two layers of trauma in this. One you see on the river where soldiers are shooting. This is taking place in Colombia before this woman was able to escape Colombia and take refuge in Ecuador. And you see that there's military violence, paramilitary violence towards her children on the river. But what you see in the bottom is another layer of trauma that she gets to in the course of the intervention with her group. And that's domestic violence, where her husband, pictured there with the bottle, is too drunk to help when she needs help and actually is abusive towards her. She eventually does leave this abusive man during the course of the work with the group. So multiple levels of trauma we're working with, and healing is truly possible. Let's go to the next. Another of the prompts is, this is what I cannot say. And so this woman titled hers, it's hard, this is hard to put into words. Another story of her trauma memory. I won't tell you this because we don't have time or emotional capacity to hear all of the trauma stories in one go. But let's go to the next one. I'm just choosing a couple to tell you about in more detail. This is one I'd like to speak about a little bit because I think it gives you an idea about the therapeutic process that can happen through the story cloths. Forced to marry my rapist. This is the story of a young woman, about 18 or 19 when we encountered her. And she tells this story of she was raped and abducted and raped and held captive for quite some time. You see her there in the white thread, and next to her is the perpetrator. And then in this depiction, she puts her parents and his parents. But she did not marry this man, although her parents were trying to make her do this to save face for the family. But instead, as is, she escapes, and she escapes on foot. They chase her in that vehicle, and she manages to get to the center where we have healing circles, and she tells her story in cloth. And the group asks her, so is this your wedding gown in white? No, she says, I made myself invisible because no one really sees me. And the leader of the group says, wow, who else here has felt invisible? And they begin to have a discussion about that, a very deep one, and one that creates strong bonds. And then as the work goes on, they continue to use the story cloth therapeutically. And people in the group notice that the figure in green, that's her mother, has no hands and no feet, which she had not realized. And she said, and the mother has no agency. This is what her own story cloth teaches her, that she did not realize this happened unconsciously, as is often the case with artwork, yes? And so she responds to that and begins to develop a kind of compassion for her mother that she had lacked. She had been, of course, enraged with her mother for not standing up, for not supporting her, for not understanding her predicament, for not helping her. Then she realizes that her mother was in the same position, that her mother had no agency, no power, had been unable to stand with her. And she promises herself that she will not be like her mother. And the group points out to her, look, you have feet. You used those feet to escape, to run, and you made it to safety. And look, you have hands in the picture. You gave yourself hands with which you sewed this story cloth. You told your story. You will not be like your mother. And so she finds a great deal of resolution in the process of making this story cloth. These all have these stories behind stories. That's the richness of this process that textile art has given us. Go ahead to the next. Some people use metaphors to tell their story. This is a Pakistani woman in Nepal who had withstood severe persecution by the Taliban. And she pictures there as a hunter against the small birds. Go ahead. This is from an LGBTQ circle in Nepal. And this is made by a trans man about his journey of transformation. You see there the butterfly. This is made by someone who had never even sewn before and told this quite magnificent story, an intricate story of his own transformation. Next. Another of the prompts that we use is, this is what the cloth is trying to say, not me, but rather the cloth. And this is another very moving story of the recovery from a traumatic experience. We'll go on. And these are this is one from Congo, another one, Dark Experiences at the Mine, where the workers in the mine, in order to earn their wages, in order to be able to collect the wages that they have earned, they must submit to the bosses on a regular basis. Next. Okay, and we're going to click through these. I just want to tell you a little bit about some of the what we have studied about these interventions, that we see statistically significant reductions in depression and PTSD with this intervention. Next. There's an increase as we measure it in subjective well-being, a sense of wellness that the women come into. They have much improved personal relationships. They're able to establish trust again after severe betrayals. Next. And they quite enjoy the program. There's a lot of joy in these circles, actually. And next. So what are some of the things that they tell us about this? You can click through these, Ragna, and people can just see some of the comments that people in the circles are making about. That tells me that my time's up, but we'll flip through the rest of it. Sorry. We can go on. The next couple of slides give more thoughts about from the participants in the circles, and click. Yes. What we really see is quite transformative and enduring change, which is what we're looking for. We do not do crisis intervention. This is a treatment modality that requires a certain level of stability, and it's for long-term healing. And I really want to thank very much the World Hope Forum for inviting me today. I hope you will follow us, those who are interested, and go to our website for more information. Next. slide will give you that. Um, and we hope that you will support the work that we're doing in many parts of the world. Thank you so much.
Common Threads always needs more funding, so please, if that is end of the year cadeau you give to society, this could be it. Rachel, can you open it? Rachel, I want to share with you a thing I saw in former presentations, is that the way the nature is pictured, you have the trauma, and then you have the environment and the nature. And the way they do the plants and the flowers and the trees and the birds is extraordinary. I mean, it's art, and it's outside the art, and it's joyful, crazy enough, in the context of the trauma.
We use those images that they place there as their safe place. And when we work on the story cloth, because it comes up very naturally, we don't ask them to do that, but it's always there. There is beauty and safety, and we actually help them focus from the traumatic event, which is in the story cloth, back to that place of safety and beauty and comfort, back to the trauma to work on it, back to the safety to feel comfort and stability. And they use those images within the story cloth, just as you point out, to find that place in themselves, to find their strength, and to be able to go back to the work of the processing of the trauma.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for our hugging.
My pleasure. I needed it too.
We're all going to do that in any moment we need it.
Thank you. I'm so glad. Happy to share that.
Thank you. So our next